Would I move to Switzerland knowing what I know now? Yes. But also no, it's complicated. Let me explain. Today I want to talk to you about the challenges that I faced moving to Switzerland and what you can do to avoid them. For those of you who are new here, hi, welcome. My name is Sarah. I'm a UK trained medical doctor. After having graduated from King's and worked in London during the COVID pandemic, I moved to Switzerland, where I'm currently working as an internal medicine resident. Here is what I would do differently if I was starting over in Switzerland as a doctor. It's so easy in this day and age to look at someone's highlight reel on social media and think their life is perfect. You gloss over all the challenges, the failures, the plans A's and B's and Z's, the breakdowns and the hours of struggle, and somehow naively, even though we know deep down it's not true, we just think it's easy for them. There's just an incredible tendency to oversimplify people's lives. We have this innate bias where, because we're living in our own shoes, we know how complicated our life is and all our problems, and yet when we walk past someone in the street, it's so easy to oversimplify their lives. And if this has ever happened to you, know what a perspective shift it is when you take time to talk to that person and they tell you something that they're going through or a life challenge they've had, and all of a sudden you see them in a different light. And even though you know innately, we all know that everyone has different challenges, nobody is living a life without struggle, once we find that out from a person, we see them in a different light. And it's almost like adding pixels to a blurry picture. You see more clearly how complex everybody's life is. But social media really feeds on this highlight reel tendency. And aside from the obvious problems of comparison being the thief of joy and all the issues that social media can bring, I think something that we don't really talk about is the blind spots that comes with it. If you look at someone's journey, you look at their success and you don't see the pitfalls, if you try and emulate that path because it seems appealing to you and it now becomes your dream, you will likely be faced with a lot of the same challenges and pitfalls. Yes, because as much as we love a cinematic scene where the main character is training in the rain with inspiring cinematic orchestra in the background, real life is much less dramatic with a much longer training sequence that can be very boring and make you want to stop along the way. So my point is, if you just see the highlights, you don't see the pitfalls, when you're walking towards that goal, you don't know where to put your feet, you don't know where to look, you don't know where your blind spot is. And this is definitely how I felt moving to Switzerland and navigating the world of medicine and medical specialty training. This is why I'd like to share my highlight reel of pitfalls. So if you decide to embark on a similar journey, although your journey is going to be unique to you, at least you'll have some awareness of the common pitfalls that you should look out for. Without further ado, let's get started. Feel free to jump through this video with the timestamps below. So the number one thing, if I was starting my medical journey in Switzerland, would be to get an internship in a big university hospital. So this is not what I ended up doing. I found a tiny little private clinic in a small town somewhere in Switzerland, which wasn't entirely ideal. But first of all, the idea of an internship, it might seem obvious, but many people skip this step when they move to Switzerland because they're already doctors. Just to clarify, I'm talking about medicine after university. So you've graduated, you've got your medical degree, and you're going either into postgrad training or you've finished postgrad training, you've got your specialty degree, and you're now looking to find a job as residents and attendees. And because we're already doctors and we've done all these internships and we've gone through medical school, we might tend to overlook this step because usually that's something you do for work experience, and if you're already a doctor, that might not seem like something that is absolutely indispensable. Honestly, the number one reason I would recommend doing an internship is an icebreaker. It's an icebreaker to the country in itself. It makes the move to Switzerland like a real tangible thing you can do rather than just an idea in your head that you've had for a couple of months or years. It also removes this fear factor. When you have an idea in your head, it might seem so big and you might catastrophize and just think of all the ways it could go wrong. And when you do something tangible like an internship in the place you're thinking of moving to, all of a sudden it doesn't seem as scary as before. And don't get me wrong, it can be extremely challenging. There are big differences beyond just the difference in language, which is already a big thing. But it does help to just see other doctors and think, hey, I could do that job. And you see patients and you think, they're pretty similar to back home. It's reassuring to see with your own eyes that although medicine is so different worldwide and is approached in many different ways, it is still a universal language and you can make it here. Third reason why I recommend it is to start or to accelerate your language learning process. As I've mentioned in other videos, there are 4 national languages in Switzerland: French, Italian, German, and Romansh. And even if you already speak one of these languages like I did, learning the medical terminology is a completely different ballgame. And I think the sooner you can soak it in and just be around doctors, patients, see how medical history is taken in that language, how colleagues communicate with each other, small conversations in the break rooms, all these things can really help you accelerate your learning process. Number 2 is linked to the first point, and the reason why I said a big university hospital ideally, because number 2 is understand the Swiss specialty training system. And trust me when I tell you, It was so confusing when I got here. I didn't know what I didn't know. And honestly, there's still things I'm learning now that might have changed my decisions back then. The Swiss specialty training system is confusing, and that's mainly because you don't have that many resources available. The only resource I had was the official one from ISFM, l'Institut Suisse pour la Formation Médicale. I'll put a link to their website down below, and basically on there you'll find loads of information about different specialties and the requirements for each one. I still found it very confusing. It was talking about category A and B hospitals, and there weren't any case studies, forums, YouTubers talking about this, and that's part of the reason why I'm still making these videos, hopefully filling in that gap and giving you more practical information about medicine here in Switzerland. There's just such a stark contrast with the UK, where for literally anything in medicine you will find an unlimited number of YouTubers, forums, even companies that give you courses and take you through each process step by step. Information and knowledge is power, and that's what I was really lacking when I came here. And I was figuring it out step by step as I was going along. The reason I say try and get an internship in a big university hospital, because that's where the swarm of medical students and people who are focused on their training will be. And I really think it's the fastest way to understand how it works, see live case studies of people going through it, and that networking will take you much farther and much quicker than if you did what I did, which was just show up and wing it by yourself. And if you're thinking, yes, but Sarah, how am I supposed to find a work placement in a big university hospital? I don't know where to start. I can help with that. So let me know in the comments down below if you would like to see a video about how to get a work placement, including who you need to contact and what you need to do. Back to my second point. So to give you a concrete example, I found out that there were networks here, so they call them réseaux, for certain specialties like orthopedics, obs and gynae, pediatrics, to name a few. And essentially what happens is you can apply for an interview. If you get an interview and it goes well, it's sort of like a business class upgrade. So they pretty much guarantee and sort out your medical training from the first year to the final year, with guaranteed spots in what can be very competitive places. Now, this might not seem like a big deal to you if you don't know the Swiss medical system, because in the UK it's kind of similar. You go through an interview exam process and then you've got your medical training pathway and it's all sorted. And yes, there are other exams along the way, but you have your training spot. This is not the case in Switzerland. I feel like I'm branching out in so many different topics, so if any of these interest you, just let me know in the comments down below and I'll go more detailed. But basically, the Swiss medical training is very much à la carte. So there are specific criteria for each specialty of how long the training needs to be, which hospitals you can do them at, etc, etc. But if you follow those rules, you sort of make up your own training pathway. And you do have quite a bit of flexibility, which can be an advantage, but then also because you're kind of freestyling it as you go along. I've had some friends who've had to wait it out a year or two or even more to get the spots that they really want, like for example in pediatrics. So the system means that you might have to wait a while before you get the specialty that you want. And honestly, the best thing you can do is understand the system, because if you don't, with the nature of the way it's built, you might have to wait longer to get the jobs that you actually want. The next thing I learned the hard way is to apply early. And when I say early, I don't mean 2 or 6 months in advance, I mean 2 years in advance. As early as you can apply, do it. I found out when I moved to Switzerland that it's very commonplace for fourth year medical students to already apply for their first job. And here I was in October applying for jobs for November. Let's just say it was not the best move because of the freestyle sort of approach to the specialty training system that I briefly talked about, and the fact that Switzerland is a pretty small country, and on top of that you'll be even more geographically limited by the language that you speak. It very quickly gets competitive depending on the specialty you want to do. Yes, some jobs are relatively easier to get, like a psychiatry job or even in an emergency department sometimes, depending on the turnover, which is usually much more rapid than other specialties. Apply as early as you can. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you take on extra years of training and things that you're not particularly interested in or that don't fit in your dream specialty because you didn't plan in advance. If, like me, you didn't have 2 years in advance to plan your move to Switzerland and apply for jobs that early, the next best thing is to know when to apply. So this is the strategic sort of last minute hack approach, which does definitely work. So what you need to know, which I didn't know, is that there are 2 official dates in the year where doctors start their medical jobs, the 1st of November and the 1st of May. There are some rare exceptions that I'll talk about, but overall the whole country runs on this system. That's literally how I got my first job. So even though I had no idea that doctors started in November, I moved in Switzerland a couple of weeks before that, and I was applying to jobs, trying to figure out where and how to do it. And it's a few weeks before this start time that hospitals are looking for last minute replacement. There are always last minute changes, and that's when they need a quick replacement. And it's not just a 1 month replacement job. You can actually get like a 6 month, 1 year or 2 year job like this. So usually the interview rounds happen around a year and a half before the start date of the job you're applying for. So that's to give you an idea of how early you're expected to apply. What happens in Switzerland oftentimes is that because of the freestyle training approach and how competitive it can be, quite a few trainees will accept multiple posts and then make a decision sort of last minute. It's not ideal, it's not good form, but that's what happens. happens. And the advantage for somebody who hasn't been able to apply early is that there are these jobs available pretty last minute that are yours for the taking. And that takes us to our next point, which is apply far and wide. Apply everywhere. Just email, email, email. Unless there is a specific place in Switzerland or a specific job that you absolutely want and nothing else, and you're prepared to wait for it forever. If I were you, or if I was me starting again, I would apply everywhere I spoke the language, whether it be a small DGH hospital or a big university hospital. Just apply. And the logical thing I did was to apply to job listings. I would look on the website and just see if there were any jobs available and apply to those. Wrong. Very wrong. Don't do that. I mean, you can do that, but what you mostly need to do is to send out spontaneous applications. That's literally what everyone does. It's what's expected. And you're missing out on so many potential jobs if you're not sending out spontaneous applications. And going back to the November and May start time, when employees are looking for candidates for last minute spots, they're going to look at the pool of applications that they have. And if you've never applied because there was never a job listing, you're not going to be on that list. This is on the same theme of job applications, but as soon as you have your first job, apply for your second job. I remember being relieved having my first job and thinking I could sort of relax a little bit, get into it, focus on just doing my best and learning as much as I could. And yes, it's great to do that, but if you don't apply for your next job, you're going to find yourself in the same vicious cycle every single time. So no matter whether your contract is for 6 months, a year, or 2 years, give yourself that head start, which is the normal start in Switzerland, and apply for the next job and repeat that process again and again until you've got your whole specialty planned out. And psychologically, it's just something you can tick off and focus on the actual training rather than planning the training. I said it was the last point on applying, but I have one more. And I guess this is something I kind of did. Apply for jobs in the same hospital. So the way I see it is your first job, you're putting a foot through that door, and hopefully it's a hospital that you like and it's a big enough hospital for there to be different departments and different specialties. It is 100% easier to get a job in a different department in the same hospital than going through the process of what we detailed before with spontaneous applications. Switzerland is a very small country, even smaller depending on the language you speak. So it still works a lot via networking. And you can see that as a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the reality. You will see this in every job, in every single country, but I think it's slightly more noticeable here. And when people get to know you and work with you, the barrier of entry to different jobs in that hospital is so much lower. It just takes a hallway conversation between two of the head of department to get you that job, or even calling up different specialties all the time for your patients. They end up getting to know you, and it's so much easier to just ask if you could get a job in that department. The likelihood of you getting it is so much higher than if you just sent in your CV. So really try to harness that and use it to your advantage. I think we'll leave that as the final point. So if we go back to the question of would I move to Switzerland as a doctor knowing what I know today, if you can look back in the past and you have a clear overview of the chessboard game that is your life, and you can see the importance of each piece and the consequence of every move, of course you can speculate that there might have been a better choice. That's the thing. There's a million different paths you can take in life, a million different choices. It's always good to reassess our choices to learn from our mistakes, but I find comfort in the fact that there are so many options I could have taken, and I will never know if they would have made me a happier person, a more fulfilled person, or taken me through life challenges that would have built my character even more. Also, the other thing is, and I don't want this video to be about this topic, but your hindsight decision of would I do it again depends on what chapter of your life you're in now. So if you're currently working through a difficult challenge in life, it's much more likely to think that you wouldn't have made that choice because you're suffering right now. Even if deep down you've accepted it, the same thing can be said if you're towards the end of that challenge and you start to see the bright side of things, you're in the ease chapter of your life. Of course you're going to look back at that decision and say, I made the right choice. There's a quote that I really like and that I try to put into practice by Dr. Ellen Langer, who's a psychology professor at Harvard. And the quote is, don't make the right decision, make the decision right. And I think that's such a profound statement that if put into practice, instantly gives you that mindset shift of it doesn't matter where you are in life, what situation you're in, it's all about what you can make of it. In so many ways, we don't choose where we're born, which family we're in, the education system in which we're brought up, and many things will happen to us in life, and it feels like we play a very passive role as the main character. And I think the way to flip into a proactive role is embodied in this quote of approaching every chapter of your life with a mindset of, how can I make this the right decision for me? In what tiny way can I make this situation a learning curve for me and make me slightly better than I was yesterday? And I think that's such a powerful and beautiful way of seeing life. I would love to hear in the comments down below of something that was challenging to go through, but that you're really glad you did go through. I hope this video was useful. If you have any questions at all about medicine in general or moving to Switzerland, feel free to comment down below, message me on Instagram, or email me with the info you can find down below. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.